Namaskar, welcome to another edition of Navinosh podcast. So today we are going to have one reading session of this book that you see in front of me, SvayamBodh and ShatruBodh, written by Mr. Pankaj Saxena. And I have an additional book as well, signed by him. So this will be here and I will be reading from here. And before we read this book, okay, there are a few things which needs to be clarified. So we probably going to have yes, it is live. It is live. We're going to have one more live on 10:30 p.m. So before we read this book, there are a few things which I need to tell before starting. So if you see the title, the book. So the book has three sections. Let me just show you the people. Here it is. So it has section A and section B. So for today, I have chosen section B, and the first is regarding who is an enemy of Sanatan Dharma. So considering what is happening around us in our houses, in our surroundings right now, I thought we can start reading this chapter called Enemies of Sanatan Dharma. Yes, page 133 of the book itself. And we will have again read few more of these chapters as well. The one chapter which there is called chapter 11, weaponization of life. Very important chapter which we need to read, we need to discuss. Probably we'll also have the author come and discuss his book as well. He has done multiple podcasts, but there are few things which I wanted to talk to him. But I thought, okay, before we get the author to come and discuss with us, why don't we read? Because reading is something which is very important. The core concepts which are there, they have to be understood. They have to be understood in all complexity and in all totality, which is doesn't really happen in a 1.5 hour discussion. So whoever who is listening to this, just be a little bit patient. I'm going to read as much as possible. Around 10:30, again we have one more podcast which is coming up. Again on the a threat on the Hindu existence. So I thought, okay, before 10:30 p.m. let's discuss and read about it. The concept of ShatruBodh in Sanatan Dharma, page 133. Keep your comments coming. We'll try to take them. Share your thoughts. 133. Section B, ShatruBodh. In section A, we discussed what it means to be a Hindu in practice and experience. Now we proceed to know the civilizational enemies or Shatrus of the Sanatan Dharma. Whether we like it or not, the truth is that Hindu society is under siege from all sides and Sanatan Dharma is in danger. The enemies are very intelligent. Now, this is a very important part, important concept that this specific line, which I had read to, but I think we need to discuss and understand our Shatru in proper context, is that the enemies are very, the enemies, not one enemy. Sanatan Dharma has multiple enemies. The enemies are very intelligent and while fighting with full force themselves, they have significantly reduced the fighting capability of Hindus by deluding Hindus, with distortions and lies. Now, this line, again, I will read it again. The enemies are very intelligent, and while fighting with full force themselves, they have significantly reduced the fighting capability of Hindus by deluding them with distortions and lies. As a result, most Hindus either look away from the battle of existence that Sanatana Dharma is fighting. Very powerful words he is mentioning here. As a result, most Hindus either look away. We see a lot of people who are going to blame a political party or organizations or individuals that they are not doing anything for Hindus. But have they asked themselves what they have done for for themselves and for the Hindu society in general? Are they running away from the battle that they need to fight? So, as a result, most Hindus either look away from the battle of existence that Sanatan Dharma is fighting, or some actively aid the enemy narrative and agenda. So we have a multi-pronged attack on Sanatan Dharma. One is a section of Hindus who are not willing to fight, are not willing to contribute to the fight to preserve Sanatan Dharma. And on the other hand, some Hindus are aligning with the enemy to actually push and help the narrative and agenda of our enemies. But Hindu society has great internal strength. Sanatan Dharma has many hidden powers. Now, again, but Hindu society has great internal strength. Sanatan Dharma has many hidden powers. But as Professor Kapil Kapoor is a very well-known author and an ideologue, who has done great work. Some we get a chance we will read his book as well sometimes. I have one or two his books which we will be reading it. But he's a very important figure in the fight for Sanatan Dharma. As Professor Kapil Kapoor puts it, Hindus suffer from Hanuman syndrome. Okay, what is Hanuman syndrome? Hindus suffer from Hanuman syndrome. They keep forgetting their powers. I think there are some stories or katha where Hanumanji forgets his powers and he behaves like a normal person. So he's equating here Hanumanji's experience that he forgot his own powers and he was like behaving like a normal human being. He's a god. He's a devta. Hindus suffer from Hanuman syndrome. They keep forgetting their powers, and someone has to remind them that they are extremely powerful and capable. Once the smriti of their own strength is thus awakened, they become a formidable force of dharma, protecting Hindus as well as others who seek protection of Sanatan Dharma. In this section, we will learn about ShatruBodh, how to identify the ideological and civilizational enemy, and how to fight it at the level of ideas. One should be clear that this fight is not with individuals but with ideas. Now, this is also a very important part of ShatruBodh, that how to identify the ideological and civilizational enemy and how to fight at the level of ideas. One should be clear that this fight is not with individuals. No individual is enemy of Sanatana Dharma, but with ideas and ideologies that encourage the individuals to fight. We shall take Shatru in that spirit. Shatru is a idea of ideologies who try to harm dharma, Sanatan Dharma, not individuals who are doing it. Enemies of Sanatan Dharma. So we have a quote from here, the most venerable Sitaram Goelji, who mentions Hindu society under siege, temple destructions, and here is a image is there of a temple being destroyed. For survival, we need Shatru, which means so. Okay, so now we are starting the chapter itself. Who is a Shatru? For survival, we need Shatru, which means to know the enemy. Speaking in civilizational terms, the most important question of this book is who is the enemy of Hindu civilization and what to do to protect Sanatan Dharma and Hindu society from this enemy. For a Hindu, an enemy is an ideological institutional force. Okay, again, very important words. For a Hindu, an enemy is an ideological and institutional force that aims to destroy Hindu dharma, society, and civilization. So, our Shatru is not an individual but institutions and ideologies which propagate and create and support individuals who are trying to destroy Hindu dharma, society, and civilization. This enemy cannot be an individual, although many individuals can embody and represent enemy force at any given time. Now, this is a very interesting. Let me give an example of this so people can better relate to it. Now, this enemy cannot be an individual, although many individuals can embody and represent enemy force at any given time. Now, this example would be George Soros, which comes to my mind. George Soros is funding institutions as an individual. George Soros is creating institutions which are harming and trying to destroy Sanatan Dharma and its roots and its society via funding those institutions, peoples, and other ideologies who are trying to destroy our Sanatan Dharma. But it is critical to understand that individuals are not the enemies. The enemy of Hindu civilization is a political ideology like Marxism, a religious fundamentalism, a religious fundamentalism like Islamism, or Christian evangelism. Now, it mentions Christian evangelism or a destructive ideological fashion like wokeism or militant liberalism. Its its characteristics as an enemy is decided by its will to destroy Hindu society. 42 years ago, one of the greatest historians and Hindu thinker of the 20th century, Sri Sitaram Goel, tried, tried warning Hindu society by writing a book by the name of Hindu Society Under Siege, claiming that we are under siege from five forces or five kinds of imperialism, and let alone putting up a fight to survive and defeat the invaders. We are not even aware of the siege. For defeating the Shatru, you need first have Shatrubodh. The first rule of defense is that we shall be aware that we are under attack. A bad news for that 42 years after Sitaram Goel sounded the warning, there is still no critical number of Hindus who realize that the Hindu society is under siege and who have proper Shatrubodh. The good news is that we have made a lot of progress. And since the warning, the number of Hindus having acute Shatrubodh has increased by a factor of many magnitudes. Significant progress has already been achieved, mainly due to the work of great civilizational warriors like Sri Chitaram Goel, but much needs to be done. In Hindu society under siege, Sitaram Goel stressed the role of Hindu society. Again, the focus is on Hindu society. The concept of Shatrubodh, who is our enemy, that needs to be understood at a societal level, not at a individual level. The most critical intervention, I think, oh, yeah, the Hindu society is saving. Okay, so Hindu society under siege. Sitaram Goel stressed the role of Hindu society in saving Hindu dharma and civilization. The most critical intervention that contemporary Hindus can make is to save Hindu society. If you want to save Hindu dharma, you need to save Hindu society. As culture lives through society and survives only when society keeps practicing its own dharma and keeps perpetuating and protecting its culture. Dharma and culture goes hand in hand. Most of the ancient world cultures collapsed since their societies converted to either Christianity or Islam. Sitaram Goel warns us that the same fate might await us in the future if we do not make efforts to save Hindu society. Hindu culture can meet the same frightful fate if there were no Hindu society to sustain it. This is the point which is not always remembered even by those who take pride in Hindu culture. There are many Hindus who cherish the great spiritual traditions of Hinduism and its scriptures like the Gita, the Upanishads, in which that tradition is enshrined. But they do not cherish with an equal enthusiasm the Hindu. They do not cherish with an equal enthusiasm the Hindu society which has honored and preserved these traditions and scriptures down the ages. The argument is that me as an individual can read Gita, can appreciate Gita, can read Upanishad, appreciate its wisdom. But me as an individual, or you as an individual, are unable to appreciate and preserve and protect Hindu society because I am able to read Gita, Upanishad, is because Hindu society has preserved those texts for us. It's a collective will, not an individual act. It's important to know this. Society preserves. Society is the collective will of the all individuals to protect something that they cherish. So the wisdoms in Gita and Upanishads was preserved for us, and also we will preserve it for future generations as an act of society, not as an act of individuals. Hindu culture can meet the same frightful fate if there were no Hindu society to sustain it. This is a point which not always remembered even by those who take pride in Hindu culture. Dharma sustains when society is proclaiming to live on. Dharma is not just preserved by preserving the text or darshanas. Now, again, very important point. Dharma is not just preserved by preserving text or darshanas. Dharma is practice. Again, we call practicing Hindu and a non-practicing Hindu. What does it mean? That just having a text, just having the Gita and Upanishad in your bookshelf and not reading it, not getting the wisdom, not implementing the wisdoms of Gita and Upanishad in your life, you cannot preserve, protect dharma just by having Gita and Upanishad in your bookshelf. That is not preserving. How to preserve it? It says dharma is practice. It lives on the practices it, embodying it live on. Conversely, dharma dies in a certain region if dharmic practices are abandoned by its former followers. Greek philosophy is still taught in all universities of the world. Greek scriptures or epics are still extant, and tons of doctorates are done on them all over the world every year. And yet, Greek tradition is no more because Greek society bearing Greek traditions abandoned its ancestral dharma and all the cultural moorings and accepted Christianity. Sanatan Dharma can meet the same fate if Hindu society, bearing its bearing bearing its breakdown and starts converting to Christianity or Islam, as Sitaram Goel want. Hindus are many. There are many Hindus who proclaim with great confidence that Sanatan Dharma, that is Hinduism, can never die. Interesting. This is true in a sense. There will always be individuals in non Hindu societies who will recover the mystique of Sanatan Dharma through their efforts at self discovery. But Sanatan Dharma will surely suffer an eclipse and no more inform mankind at large with its message if there is no Hindu society to sustain it. The first stage to win a war is to recognize that we are in a state of war. Now, this is something which I crib about maybe every day. That first stage to win a war is to recognize that we are in a state of war. Does Hindu society uh, recognize that we are in a state of war with ideologies, institutions who are trying to end our existence? Hindu society is under siege and we are in a state of war. This is the fact that Hindus need to accept first. Now, the author is making a very, very important point, which a lot of Hindus in name, maybe, or maybe they not practice it, but they are not recognizing that where we are. This is the fact that Hindus need to accept first that Hindu society is in a state of war. Once we have accepted this, we are forced to ponder upon the fact that what are the forces that besiege it. Sitaram Goel talks about five forces that besiege Hindu society in an attempt to destroy it eventually. More than 40 years later, these forces still besiege Hindu society, ultimately wanting to destroy Sanatan Dharma in its homeland, Bharatavarsha. Four, four of these five forces, according to Sitaram Goel, are Islamism, Christianity, materialism, and communism. I think most people are aware of this Islamism, Christianism. Macaulay was a political theorist, and communism. Communism, we all know. The fifth force, modernism, is not named directly by him but is indicated throughout the book. Of these, the first two are known as prophetic monotheistic religions. We will go deeper into the terms later, but these religions are fundamentally different from dharmic sects like Sanatan Dharma. They believe in worshipping only one form or idea of God, and the idea of a mediator, the prophet, is central to them. An important feature that distinguishes them from dharmic traditions like Sanatan Dharma is their stress on belief or dogma as primary and only criteria of judgment. As Sanjay Dixit says, the fundamental difference between Sanatan and Abrahamic worldview is that of different frameworks in which these systems operate. The Sanatan system is in essence is an experiential. The Sanatan system is in its essence is an experiential framework that creates a knowledge system, whereas the Abrahamic system belongs to a belief framework. Interesting. Traits of prophetic monotheistic religions will be discussed in subsequent chapters. Here we shall discuss how these religions came to besiege Hindu society and dharma. Before that, we need to discuss the idea of Sanatan umbrella. Now, this is also an important term, Sanatan umbrella. An idea that ensured that peace was maximized in Bharatvarsha and a code was developed to incorporate diverse cultures, ways of life on the one hand, and also weave them into the Sanatan idea on the other. The Sanatan umbrella. India has absorbed a large number of immigrants and invaders into its society and made them their own with almost zero violence. Sanatan Dharma and Hindu society and the Hindu social system had great capacity to absorb a foreign group of individuals into its own society by letting them practice their own rules and customs and integrating them with the wider Hindu society by establishing the Sanatan umbrella and its universal rules. The greatest and the most universal umbrella that the world ever saw was not Pax Britannica. Rather, it was what we call as we can call as Pax Sanatanika. Interesting. The common Sanatan umbrella that Sanatan Dharma created, in which every dharmic sect had the abhay, freedom from fear, abhay, to be what it wanted to be what it wanted to be. The Pax Sanatanika meant that all traditional sects in the Bharatvarsha would be allowed to function as they wanted, with the only condition of respecting the universal Sanatan customs. These customs were discussed in the Swayambodh section, but an important feature of Hindu society was that it did not believe in imposing one's own tradition, practices, and customs on others. Pax Sanatanika meant that the act of war would never be extended to civilians and remained confined to kings and soldiers. And even with them, there were many rules that minimized violence and barbarity. It worked even in the case of foreign invaders like the Shakas, the Huns, and other non monotheistic invaders. The animosity between kings and soldiers was never carried over to their followers. The soldiers and the soldiers and stragglers who came with the invading armies found a ready home in Bharatvarsha. They were accepted with open arms by Hindus. This openness was embedded deep in the Hindu social system, which allowed maximum diversity as well as maximum integration at the same time due to its highly modular character. Sanatan umbrella ensured that after the fight of the Kshatriyas was over, the invaders would be treated with kindness and humanity and would be allowed to follow their customs, practices, and rituals as they wanted. Pax Sanatanika meant that even the immigrants and invaders would live on this land as if it was theirs. Once the war was over, provided they did not violate the fundamental Sanatan customs and practices, India's culture of multiple value systems allowed this to happen. One could live as different community with different customs and practices, including diverse food habits, if they only behaved in a publicly sanctioned manner in public spaces. They were left alone to organize their own laws as they wished. This encouraged even the invaders to settle down peacefully, as they seldom had to change their core values and cultures. Hindu society accepted them with all their customs and practices, minus the ones that violated Sanatan Dharma. Islam breaks Pax Sanatanika. The first aberration in this great universal culture was Islam. For the first time, we encountered an invader that was not only barbaric and brutal, but it was like oil in water, unwilling to merge with the local culture and native society at any cost. Instead, it wanted to dominate and destroy Hindu Dharma so completely that not a single sign of it remains. Pakistan today is such an example, which used to be part of Bharatvarsha until a few decades ago, and now it is a cultural desert where very few signs that it was once part of Pax Sanatanika remain. Pakistan is what Bharatvarsha would now. This is important. Pakistan is what Bharatvarsha would become if Islam wins. Not only did Islam and Muslims refuse Pax Sanatanika, but they tried to destroy the Sanatan umbrella and everything that it sheltered. No other invader before Islam and Muslims had done this to Bharatvarsha. These invaders were not just after the wealth of native Hindus or the land of Bharatvarsha. Of course, they wanted that too, but it was not their primary goal. Their, they were after our dharma. They wanted to convert Hindus to Islam at the point of the sword and did so wherever they could, absolutely refusing to be part of Pax Sanatanika. They violated the most fundamental customs and traditions of the Hindus. For example, the invading Islamic armies attacked during the night, killed unarmed civilians, molested, violated, and sold Hindu women and children as sex slaves in international markets, killed Brahmins and priests, massacred and ate sacred cows, and destroyed Hindu temples. For the first time, Hindus found with shock that somebody would refuse the benevolence, freedom, and peace of Pax Sanatanika and would try to destroy it instead. A new and unprecedented enemy had arrived on the scene of this great land of Bharatvarsha, something that this land had never before encountered. The Sanatan umbrella lay shattered after the Delhi Sultanate was established in India. Islamic rule continued in India for the least 500 years in one form or the other. This long period of 500 years was the bloodiest chapter in the history of humankind. The following words of Will Durant are now famous among Hindus but are still worth quoting. The Islamic conquest of India is probably okay. Let me see if there are other comments. No, okay, so it is fine. Okay, let me just read it anyway. The Islamic conquest of India is probably the bloodiest story in history. It is discouraging tale for its evident moral is the it is discouraging tale for its evident moral is that civilization is a precious good whose delicate complex of order and freedom, culture and peace can at any moment be overthrown by barbarism, by barbarians invading from without or multiplying within. The Hindus had allowed their strength to be okay. This is interesting. Whose delicate complex of order and freedom, culture, peace can at any moment be overthrown by barbarians invading from without or multiplying within. Now, this is very barbarians invading from without or multiplying within. The Hindus had allowed their strength to be wasted in internal divisions and war. They had adopted religions like Buddhism and Jainism, which unnerved, which unnerved them, which unnerved them for the task of life. They had failed to organize their forces for the protection of their frontiers and their capitals, their wealth and their freedom. From the hordes of Scythians, Huns, Afghans, and Turks hovering, hovering about India's boundaries and waiting for national weakness to let them in. Namaskar. Hindu kingdoms were invaded continuously, and all that Hindus held dear temples, cows, Brahmins, and knowledge was destroyed ruthlessly. Not a single year went by in this long and tortuous history when genocides of Hindus was not carried on in one or the other part of the country. Many cities and regions were completely depopulated of Hindus many times in this long and difficult era. So complete was their genocide. These facts of history are recorded by Islamic historians themselves. Sitaram Goel quotes the Muslim author of Tariqi Wasaf, who is proud of the achievements of Islamic armies. The vein, the vein of the zeal, the vein of the zeal of religion beat high for the subjugation of infidelity and destruction of idols. The Muhammadan forces began to kill and slaughter on the right and the left, unmercifully throughout the impure land for the sake of Islam, and blood flowed in torrents. They plundered gold and silver to an extent greater than can be conceived, and an immense number of precious stones, as well as great variety of clothes. They took captive a great number of handsome and elegant maidens, means Hindu women, and children of both sexes. So these Islamic armies uh, captured and enslaved Hindu women and Hindu children, mean children, girls and boys both, of both sexes, more than a pen can enumerate. They were so large in numbers that they could not count it. In short, the Mohammedan army brought the country to utter ruin and destroyed the lives of the inhabitants and plundered the cities and captured their offspring, so that many temples were deserted and the idols were broken and trodden underfoot. The largest of which was Somnath. The fragments were conveyed to Delhi and the entrance of Jama. Okay, this is very interesting. The fragments of the destroyed Somnath temple were conveyed to Delhi. They were transported to Delhi, and the entrance of Jama Masjid in Delhi was paved with them, so that people might remember and talk of this brilliant victory. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of worlds. Okay, Vyomi says that somehow the book doesn't address the fact that without an emperor alone, Bharat was always under foreign invading disturbance. Uh, you can say that because okay. Hmm. No, but correct. You had at that time itself, correct. You had like small kingdoms. So you also correct. Let's talk about Mahabharata. So in Mahabharata, you had small kingdoms. So that was generally the case. Small kings couldn't do much against the larger ruthless invaders. Mm, yes, but there could be many reasons behind why it is the case. So we can discuss this with the author maybe later on this. That what could have been done. Okay. So where we okay. This does not mean that the Islamic invasions of India was a sorry tale of Hindu loss and Islamic victory. Okay, let me see. Okay. Do watch the podcast on Awara Musafir Pankaj ji and Ami Gansraj ji talked on Dharma and Shatru. Is it a latest one or a previous one? Because there are many podcasts which I have watched, but not sure it's the latest or a old one. But anyway, we'll watch it anyway. This does not mean that the Islamic invasions of India was a sorry tale of Hindu loss and Islamic victory. Within 100 years of Prophet Muhammad's death, Islam had spread like wildfire and dominated one continuous stretch from Spain in the west to India's borders. It was only India that they could not defeat instantly. Islam took around 500 years to enter India proper, until the Delhi Sultanate was established by Muhammad Ghori in the 13th century. Islam and Muslims were seen as interlude barbaric interlude in Indian history. They were known as brutally violent invaders who hit and ran, never able to stay. The Arabs exhausted themselves completely in Sindh and Multan. The Persians almost never attempted an invasion. It was the Turks, after many waves, who ultimately succeeded in India. We were the only civilization that did not collapse like a house of cards against the invading Islamic armies. Okay, thank you. We were the only civilization that did not collapse like a house of cards against the invading Islamic armies. We were the ones who survived. Historian Ram Gopal Mishra writes, the early success of Islam, he writes, were against religions which had lost their hold on the minds of the people. But in India, the Hindu way of life, symbolized by high moral values of tolerance, truthfulness, and justice, was very much the part and parcel of the multitudes of mental and material beings. These eternal and moral values of life, which constitute the core of Hinduism, were to sustain were to sustain in it the next 5 centuries of Muslim and another 2 centuries of British rule. Even after the establishment of Sultanate, every inch of Islam rule in India was contested. Now, that's a very important part. Uh, okay, interesting. I think it is already completed. We have completed the reading of Maharana. We can actually reread it or maybe discuss the topics of it. But I think it is completely done. So Maharana book reading is done. Like we have read all the chapters which are there. If there are any other books you want us to read, you can share. We will try to read them as well. Even after the establishment of the Sultanate, every inch of Islamic rule in India was contested. And not a year passed by without Hindus reversing Islamic gains or giving the invaders a deep fight. Not a city went uncontested, not a village was walkover. When they could not defend, they fled as a tactical retreat, but only to once again attack in guerrilla warfare and in concentrated army attacks whenever that was possible. First, the brave soldiers, the great Kshatriyas of this country, fought. When they were all killed in battle, the rest of the society joined in men, women, and teenagers, priests, businessmen, and artisans. Not a single Hindu community, not a single Hindu family in this great land of Bharatvarsha surrendered without fighting, veteran historian K.S. Lal writes. As we put the record straight, we find that the small and scattered class of trained and traditional Hindu warriors, mostly Rajputs, stood exhausted by the time of the Mughal invasions, having fought the earlier invaders at every step for for well night for well night for 98 9 to 8 centuries from the middle of the 7th to end of the 15th. The leadership of Hindu resistance to Muslim rule thereafter was provided by what are termed the backward caste and the Dalits in present day India. These classes had fought earlier under the leadership of Rajput Rajas and Zamindars. Now onwards, they took up the leadership on themselves and battled with the Mughal regime till the latter stood shattered in the middle of the 18th century. It is a different story that in the process of backward caste and the Dalits suffered grievously and found themselves in bad shape by the time Islamic nightmare was over. Okay. I will check. I will check and try to consolidate it. The numbers might be here and there. What we'll do is I'll create a playlist for them for that, and then you can do it. If there are any missing playlist, we will read them. Don't worry about it. It is true that Indians and Persians are the only people who call themselves Arya. I do not know. I not read enough to actually answer the question, but you can search on other encyclopedia or dictionaries, because uh, the word correct Arya. So it has multiple meanings. It is not whatever I know that if a human being has a certain kind of moral and knowledge, character, they can so can be called as Arya. So it is not a geographic term as Arya. So it can be a geographic term. It is also a term which is referred to the qualities of a human being, whom you call Arya. So it is. Yes, correct, correct. I have also watched that podcast. We'll try to do a reaction on this. I had planned it, but let's see when we can do. It was a very good podcast. I learned new things there itself. I learned great things there in the podcast itself, which I did not know previously existed. Okay, we are missing Iranians do call themselves Aryans, but in racial terms, unlike exactly there's one thing. So the Vedic Arya people, Aryas, that like whom do you call Arya in the Vedic sense is different, and the way Iranians or I think it's a very vague term because even people who are in the Central Asia, Caucasus region. Even Russians are called Aryans. So, so it's a very vague term. Arya means being cultured, enlightened. Yes, exactly. But that's a Vedic nomenclature. But it was distorted by correct when you had the Aryan invasion theory and Nazi theory of Aryan pure race. So it got distorted in many ways. People don't remember, but Iran name was kept after Persians saw small mustache man gaining in the job. Okay, interesting. Iranians actually use the word to claim superiority of heritage of blood. Exactly. I think we got to know from the Pankaj sir's podcast on JD. We learned a lot actually. I even learned a lot personally. So we'll try to. I have saved the podcast for watch later and downloaded it. Let's see when we can do a reaction on this. We'll try to do someday. Yes, it's not weird. It is human nature. It is human nature the way it works. Okay, we will have one more podcast happening at 10:30 p.m. Do join us because that is going to be an audience reaction podcast. Let me actually share it with the audience. And before that, also, let me share the as well, book details. People should go and buy this book. It is one of the most must read books. So, let's see if people can see it. Okay, this is the book. This is the Amazon link. Let me paste the Amazon link here. For people, I highly recommend go ahead and purchase this book and read this. Don't think it's a old thing. What they have done, what he has written, it has immense functionality, it's immense requirement for us as individuals, so we can actually tell people how do we know who you are. The Swayambodh and Shatru, so both are required. So please go ahead, buy this book. We're going to continue read and also invite the author to come and discuss few of the topics which are there in this book. We'll quickly finish reading this page, then we will take a pause and we'll be back again at around 10:30 p.m. And today it's an audience reaction session. So members would be preferred, and people who can become members can come and talk to us. We'll also allow other people to come later, but we prefer people to become members. But they will be able to come and discuss a very important topic, and that topic is this. This is happening today, 10:30 p.m. Symbolic gestures to substantive power. That is a series I had considered this topic that Hindu civilization. the Hindu consciousness. So, symbolic gestures, what we have seen is only symbolic gestures. We as Hindu society need to move on from symbolic gestures to substantive power of Hindu civilization. That's why the series we are having this name. And today's topic is brink of extinction, response and resurgence. So we will talk about is the Hindu consciousness, is Hindu society, is are Hindus on the brink of extinction? Is that correct? Because we are numbers, we have around a billion in numbers, but how we are into existence? So we will talk about, and that's where this also reading comes in, the Shatru, Bodh and SvayamBodh, that where we are. So we will share our opinions, you will share your opinions, we will share some data, incidents, and what's happening to get more clarity on this. So do join us at 10:30 p.m. We'll quickly finish reading this page and then we will continue. As we put the record straight, we find that the small and scattered class. I think we have read it. Okay. Every single community, region, and family that survive today. Okay, this is very important. Every single community, region, and family that survives today in India as Hindus has made an immense contribution to save Sanatan Dharma in this great land. They have made ultimate sacrifices for defending Sanatan Dharma. And the reason that we are all Hindus is that every single Hindu fought as much as he could. That is the only reason Islamic armies did not have a walkover in Bharatvarsha. As K.S. Lal writes, it was due to the Islamic invasions that many of these castes fell into hard times and were relegated to the status of lower caste. Now that's a very interesting data point. As K.S. Lal, a historian, writes, it was due to the Islamic invasions that many of these castes fell into hard times and were relegated to the status of low caste after living in jungles and remote areas for so long. Every Hindu is indebted to them, and we should help them regain a dignified status today and make them aware of their glorious and chivalrous Hindu past. Even though every Hindu region and community fought bravely, there were some defeats, some lands that were largely lost to conversions to Islam because the Muslims would convert Hindus at the point of the sword whenever they conquered a town or a kingdom. This great land of Bharatvarsha started having pockets of Muslims or followers of Islam who did not at all want to integrate themselves with the native culture. If Hindus reverted if Hindus revered the cow, Muslims ate it. If Hindus built temples, Muslims destroyed it. If Hindus respected Brahmins, Muslims cut their heads off. If Hindus never attacked civilians, civilian Hindus, women, and children were first targeted by Islamic armies. Pax Sanatanika stood violated, broadly it still held as Bharatvarsha was still a Hindu majority land, but there were many holes in as some non-universal elements and barbaric principles and practices found their way into daily lives of Indians. As we watched the new converts violate some of the most fundamental principles of Sanatan customs. These converts to Islam became the new missionaries of Islam in India. Swami Vivekananda, pondering on the problem of decreasing Hindu population in his own time, believed that Hindus have to start deconverting those who had converted to Islam and Christianity under force, and made a pertinent observation regarding conversion of Hindus. Beside, we shall otherwise decrease. Besides, we shall otherwise decrease in numbers. When the Mohammedans first came, we are said, I think, on the authority of Perishta, the oldest Mohammedan historian, to have been 600 million Hindu. Imagine, just imagine that at that time, the population of Hindus of India was 600 million. Now we are about 200 millions. And okay, so interesting. When Mohammedans had arrived in Bharatvarsha, the population of Bharat Hindus at that time was 600 million. Now we are about 200 million. So we had lost almost 1.5 times the population. And then every man going out of the Hindu pale is not only a man less but an enemy the more. The new converts became the swords and shields of Islam for reasons discussed later in the book. Not only were those converts the residue of Islam in India, as Sitaram Goel said, but they were also the active agents of an ideology that was alien to native Hindu culture and civilization. This active and devout Muslim society is what is referred to as the residue of Islamic imperialism in India. The Muslim Society of India is not a neutral spectator of political and cultural trends in this country. Now, again, the Muslim Society of India is not a neutral spectator of political and cultural trends in this country. It has been continuously trying to further the imperialistic design of Islamic armies in India much after the era of Islamic rule is over in India. Sitaram Goel says that this residue of Islamic imperialism thinks that Indian Hindus were living in ignorance and worshipping demons before Islam came to India. And it is the Muslim armies that brought the only true religion Islam to India. Since the conquest and conversion of Hindus and Bharatvarsha could not be completed in the medieval era, it is the sacred duty of Indian Muslims today to further this agenda. Muslim thinks that it is their destiny to rule the world, as India was the only country that remained non-Muslim majority after hundreds of years of Islamic rule. They feel that Hindus cheated them from their destiny. They have the same attitude towards the Judeo-Christian West. In the 17th century, the Ottoman Empire was at its peak, and the world looked as if it would kneel over to Islam and the whole world would become Muslim. But at the point Christendom finally surged ahead, Christian West had taken a quantum leap when it stumbled upon the New World and its resources, which fueled the Enlightenment, the scientific revolution, and the industrial revolution in Europe. The age of colonialism cemented the supremacy of the West on Islam. The Islamic world today feels that they have been cheated of their destiny by the Christian West. In India, this feeling is also too palpable because India is one of the few failures of Islam. Now, it's very important, this word. India is one of the few failures of Islam. India is one of the few places where Islam ruled for more than 500 years but still could not convert the majority to Islam. While Arabs could only enter India, the Turks established the Sultanate in Delhi. It was the Mughals who carried forward the Islamic dream of global conquest, with Aurangzeb making the final push to realize the dream. However, at the point, Hindu powers like Marathas and British intervened, resulting in the loss of the ruling status of Muslims. That is why the dream of Islamic reconquest is deeply ingrained in Indian Muslims, which continues to be cause of social strife. Christianity joins Islam in violating Sanatan umbrella. Okay, we're going to read this chapter. We'll finish it here. Next, our next reading is going to be on Christianity joins Islam in violating Sanatan umbrella. So thank you very much, and do join us at 10:30 p.m. for our audience reaction session where we will discuss Is Sanatan Dharma on the brink of extinction, and why it is so? And if not, how? So, okay, I have taken all the comments which were there, so not any comments are there. So, thank you very much. And also, again, let me share my screen and share. Do consider buying this book. The link is there in the chat. I need to put this thing in the comments as well, comment section. So buy this book, read this book, gift this book. Ask people to read this. This is very important for our civilization, our understanding. Okay. Okay. One question is there. Do you think China already defeat Islamic aggression or not? Mm, at its China in its current borders, they have not defeated, they have contained the radical Islamists within their borders. But if you see, Chinese are like playing the game, which is very difficult and very uh, dubious, because at one end, China is funding, helping, arming Pakistan, and at the one end they are actually containing the Islamist threat in their own borders. So it's not that China is a very fair player or a very honest player in this regard. So China may be making a mistake which the others did, that on the borders of China is Pakistan, and they are funding them, they are arming them. Who knows? There might be the same people who might attack China again when China becomes weak. China is strong today, but it will not remain strong forever. So China might be funding the people who might one day attack them. Okay, thank you. We'll rejoin around 10:30 p.m. with our panel as well. So do consider buying this book. So Jai Shri Ram, Vande Mat.